Hi everyone, my name is Maddie, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this extremely exciting video where I will be announcing the Daughter of Smoke and Bone Trilogy read-along. So anyone who knows me even a little bit or even has just watched one of my videos will probably know I am a little bit obsessed with Laini Taylor. And it is coming up, I think next year, to the 10th anniversary of one of her book series, the Daughter of Smoke and Bone Trilogy, which I adore to no end. I read it first time like 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago now, and I love it. And I've been wanting to reread it since I first read it, but I've thought I've been putting it off and not got around to it. And I thought, coming up to the 10th anniversary, all these new editions are being released, everything exciting is going on. Now would be the perfect time to reread it. But on top of that, I feel like a lot of people have read her Strange the Dreamer duology, which I have there, but not as many people, at least recently, have been reading the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. And I thought, why not host a read-along so that we can all read it together and we can all share in the excitement of this phenomenal YA urban fantasy, portal fantasy, multiverse book. So to give you a very quick overview of this series, this follows Karou, who is kind of living a double life. She's living in Prague, she is going about her life, but she also has to run errands collecting teeth for this strange, mysterious person. And she has been raised by this person, but she doesn't really know where she came from. She doesn't know her history. And then one day she loses access to this person and starts discovering a whole wealth of different fantasy things going on. And it is so good. It is enemies to lovers, it is star-crossed lovers, we've got a full-on angel sort of devil romance going on. It is also portal fantasy because especially for the first book you are very much set in Prague and then going off to these fantasy worlds. It is a multiverse, there is so much to it and it is so phenomenal, though obviously coming from me, of course I love it, but I cannot wait to read it with all of you. So in terms of what we're calling this read-along, we really thought the Daughter of Smoke and Bone read-along was just too many words. And so we're using the acronym like the book community always does, and so it's going to be DoSaBalong. So there's not too much information, it's a pretty simple structured read-along, but I will just run through it all for you. Firstly, we are obviously reading these 3 books, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, Days of Blood and Starlight, and Dreams of Gods and Monsters, and we're reading one each month for the next 3 months. So we'll be reading Daughter of Smoke and Bone in November, we'll be reading Days of Blood and Starlight in December, and Dreams of Gods and Monsters in January 2021. There will be a live show for every single one of these books, which will most likely be within the first week of the month after. So for example, the Daughter of Smoke and Bone live show will be in the first week of December, but on that, if you want to keep up to date with all of the details, the easiest place to do that is going to be the Twitter account. If you want to find out all the details as they're going along and keep up to date with all of the hosts, who I will get to in a minute, introducing all of our lovely hosts, that is the place to go. We will all be on the Twitter account, we will all be interacting with you, tweet us for anything. This is the username, DoSaBalong, follows with the name of the readathon. So just follow us over there if you want all the details. We're updating you on when the live shows will be, where you can find them, what book we're reading at the time. We may even do something sort of sharing our thoughts on the books as we go. It'll just be a really fun place to talk about this series and also just about general Laini Taylor love. So I've said that I love this series. Anyone who follows me knows I read quite a lot of fantasy anyway. There are actually 5 of us hosting this read along, and I will quickly run through who they are and why we are all hosting it, because there's actually quite a good reason towards most of it. So obviously I am hosting it, the announcement's on my channel. This was, you know, my love of Laini Taylor. I'm making all the rest of them read these books for me. And I'm obviously quite into fantasy, but there are people hosting who are more into fantasy than me. So starting off, we have our 2 resident fantasy experts, Katy from Brightest Katy Reads and Rowan from Rowan Reads. Obviously all of the details for all the hosts will be linked down below. And these 2 both love fantasy. They know so much about fantasy. They read all the YA and adult fantasy that comes out. I don't know how they keep up with it all, but they are definitely our fantasy experts. They, I think, have both read the series before, but like me, love it and want to reread it. So they will be sharing all the information with you, and I'm sure if you have any other fantasy questions, those are the people to go to. And then sort of 1 tier down is probably me. I am quite into fantasy, I read a huge amount, but I am behind. I've only been reading for a few years, and so I have so much to catch up on, so I kind of consider myself a fantasy aficionado. I'm getting there. And then the next host, India, is our fantasy enthusiast. She's recently getting into fantasy and starting along the sort of YA fantasy track, and so we thought this would be a really good way for her to get into some sort of more higher fantasy and things like that, obviously in a really accessible way, because that is absolutely something for this series. If you're not someone who reads fantasy, this is a brilliant way to give it a go. It's a really easy series and it has a gorgeous characters and plot outside of the fantasy world, so there's a lot for you to sink your teeth into. And on that note, we then have our final host, which is Spoops or Holly from Spoopy Hole, who is our complete fantasy newbie. Holly tends to read literary fiction and horror, and she does not tend to read fantasy books. But she is friends with all of us, and we are gradually introducing her to the world of fantasy. And so we got her to agree to do this because I just think the live shows are going to be really interesting when we have this breadth of opinion from someone who knows they love the series, people who know they love fantasy, people who think they like fantasy but haven't read too much, and then Spoops, who doesn't read fantasy at all. So I'm just hoping it'll create a really interesting dynamic for the live show, and as I said, a massive breadth of opinion, and it should be a really, really good group. But I think that is all the information that you need to join us in this read along. As I said, the absolute place to go to will be the Twitter. We'll be answering DMs, we'll be answering tweets. If you have any questions or anything you need to know to take part in this, please contact us over there. I will definitely be on it way too much, so you can definitely at least find me if you need any questions. Obviously, also feel free to comment questions down below here because it's my channel. I'm going to be checking, I'm going to be helping. I want as many of you to take part as possible because I just want to share the love for this series, and I feel like with it being almost 10 years old, it's not a series that is commonly talked about at the moment. It's, you know, it's an older series, and I really, really want a lot of people to pick it up because it is such a phenomenal series, and honestly, I'm just going to push my Laini Taylor agenda onto anyone who will let me. But as I said, I think that's all the information you need, so that is it for this video. Please follow along, please join us in this read along. I hope you all enjoy, and yeah, I guess I will see you in November when we're starting the first book. Bye, and I'll see you then.